Hi guys, and thank you for joining me for this Yoga Sizzle video. This deconstruction asana video, so looking at one particular posture, is going to look at a pose called Parsvakonasana. It translates to mean side angle pose. And it looks a little like this. It's a side lunge with a side bend of the spine. So you get a lot of side angles. And I must admit, for many, many years, this was probably one of my absolute challenge poses. I used to find it really hard in the front leg and the hip, and oh gosh, didn't know how to get down to the ground. But by understanding what the components of the pose and understanding what my body can do and where it needs to go, and then I pieced it together, and now I actually really enjoy it. So, what's happening in the body? Well, the legs are very similar to Warrior Two. They are Warrior Two legs. It's a side lunge with the front knee stacked on top of the front ankle. The pelvis is angled slightly forward, and you've got a straight back leg. The toes, the knee, and the hip will be slightly angled. And then from here, it can either be a delicious, really deep side bend for the spine, or it can be a bit more of a hip opener. So if you're going to make it into a more spine-focused practice, you really lift up the front hip and reach your front armpit down. And then you can either rest your arm on the thigh, and it's like you're doing a side crunch. Or you can try to reach down to the ground, still front hip to front armpit. If you have a block nearby, it can be helpful to have a block. You're still trying to do that side crunch. And then depending on how low you go, comfortably. And then the top arm can either reach up towards the sky or traditionally reach forward. Still pressing the front hip forward, or rather lifting the hip toward your armpit. Now, if you're going more for a hip opening, then you might tilt more at the hip as you come down. And then there's not that focus of front hip to armpit. So that's the basics of what the pose looks like and what's happening in the pose, either lifting the front hip or letting the front hip drop, and then bending a little or a lot at the spine, and then reaching your top arm forward past the ear so you get that really nice long stretch of the top side of the body. If you're fairly new, don't worry about bringing your hand to the ground. And it wasn't until many years into my practice that somebody actually told me it's still the pose if you have your elbow on the thigh. It just keeps you up a little higher. But don't use this as an excuse to just hang out and collapse. It stays really nice and active, and you're trying to push your elbow forward towards the knee. And that can also help to lift up the top side of your rib cage and get a little deeper bend of the spine. And as you stretch out through the fingertips, you get that nice long stretch. Now, I always like to talk about the butt, and as in most of the standing poses, or I'd probably say all the standing poses, your bum is key. It stabilizes the pelvis, supports the pelvis, and especially in this posture, you want to be activating into the front buttocks to ensure the external hip rotation of the front thigh, and ensure in the back buttocks, it's toning to ensure that hip stretch. And then you're trying to press the front of your back groin across on the diagonal, and that gives a nice lengthening sensation along the front side of your body. And you're reaching out through your fingertips. Now what can often happen is, like I was saying, we'll collapse and this arm will just droop. We'll stick our butt out, we'll poke the ribs. So how do you correct it? Well, if we start at the hips, rein them in. So tucking the front sit bone under, keeping your front thigh parallel to the length of your mat, And then you tuck in the ribs, especially these lower floating ribs. That will actually make it easier for you to turn the spine and get the chest opening. And then you can look up, maybe reach your hand up, or across. But if you're sticking your butt out and you're flinging into your ribs, then you're just going to crunch into your lower back if you try and turn up. So bum in, ribs in, and then turn your entire chest, the entire rib cage. Pressing the elbow down. If you're able to bring the hand a little closer to the floor, maybe on the inside or the outside of your foot, you're still trying to push, you're not collapsing, but you're pushing the fingers forward to lift the rib cage a little higher, getting long in the body. So how do you get in and out of this pose? Well, traditionally, like I've been showing, probably the most common way would be from your warrior two, and then you start leaning elbow to thigh or fingers to floor. A slightly harder way, and this will require quite a lot of hip opening in the front hip. Your hands on the floor, and then you spin the back heel to the ground, and you leave the front hand on the floor, either on the inside or the outside of the foot, and then you can reach your arm forward, or you can take your arm up to the sky. But from down here, it's really important that you don't stick your butt out. You rein in the sit bone, and if you really want to get into that buttocks, try to lift the front hip towards your armpit. That can help activate it a little more and give you a deeper side bend so that it's possible to bring your hand a little closer to the floor. So if you want your hand closer to the floor, really use your spine. And the ribs in, turn your chest up. If you're fairly new to yoga, definitely keep your hand up, your elbow on the thigh. And then as you advance and your practice grows, you take it deeper and deeper and deeper. If you need, you can even stay up here with the hand on the thigh, and you add just a little bit. So always listening to what is comfortable for your body, your hips, and each time it's going to change. Things will get better and better, and things will improve, and then you'll have some days where it's like 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But go with it. Let your body tell you what it's possible, what it's capable of doing. And then I hope you learn to love this pose as well. Enjoy. Namaste.